MMA Analyst, being joined today by Tom Wright, the newly appointed Director of Operations from UFC Canada. Thank you for your time.
My pleasure. Looking forward to it, man.
All right. Sounds like an amazing situation that you've been brought into, and for good reason. I have seen your track record. On May 25th, UFC CEO Lorenzo Fertitta and UFC President Dana White announced the plans to open an office in Toronto and named you as the obvious choice to oversee it all. How did this fall into place?
Well, you know, it was actually a long time coming. One of my best friends when I was working in the States with Solomon North America ended up, he was my chief marketing officer in the US. He subsequently left Solomon when I came back to Canada, joined Burton Snowboards, was their CMO globally, and he ended up, through a friend, becoming the chief marketing officer for UFC. This happened about, say 14, 16 months ago. So anyway, as the UFC were looking at having some challenges in Montreal with the fight and having some challenges connecting into some government people here in Ontario, he called me up and asked me if I'd open up some doors for him, make a few calls, which I did. And then one thing led to another, and they invited my wife and I down to UFC 104 at the Staples Center. We watched that event, and then discussions continued, and they came to the conclusion, Carson, I think this is a really important conclusion that the UFC came to, that in order to be successful long-term in Canada, they needed to make a commitment to this country. And that commitment was in the form of having a permanent presence here, making an investment, putting up an office, bringing in some people to work in that office, and really demonstrating a very long-term commitment to the country. And so when they made that decision, then they talked to me about heading up the operations. And since I had met a bunch of them since then, and one thing led to another, and then what happened on Tuesday this week.
Cool. Now, obviously, the legalization of mixed martial arts will be a major focal point, but what else will the Canadian office and yourself oversee?
Well, you're right. Priority one is to get our sport sanctioned and regulated in all provinces across the country, not just here, but all provinces across the country. But after that, it's all about building the business, all about building the brand, and all about building the sport here in Canada. So that includes everything from working on setting up and establishing UFC gyms here, to working with our retail partners on video games and action figures, to our sporting goods retail partners on licensed product and clothing and footwear, to having and building really deep relationships with our broadcast partners, not only pay-per-view but over the air, working directly with our media partners. They're all those parts of the business that we want to work on, Carson. And the other thing that's really important is this notion of making sure that we give back to the communities in which we hold events. You know, as you know, there's an event next week on the 12th of June in Vancouver. We then have a WEC event on the 20th of June, Sunday at 3 o'clock at Rexall Place. So we want to make sure that when we go into these communities that we give back and we start to develop talent, we start to develop the sport. And we may do it individually with individual martial arts. We may end up doing, it's still early days, figuring out how we're going to give back to the amateur sport and the communities and where we hold events. But that's going to be fundamental to the work that we do. And long term, we'd like to have a situation where we are holding at least 3 major events in Canada on an annual basis. And you can figure out where those events just might be.
Right. Okay, now Dana White has discussed putting on the Ultimate Fighter Canada. He's also mentioned, I believe, the Ultimate Fighter in China and Ultimate Fighter, I believe, UK. But in regards to the Ultimate Fighter Canada, in the future, is this something that your office would be in charge of or would look over?
Absolutely. I mean, I think what you'll find is that you know, we're going to work very closely with UFC offices around the world. I mean, the UK was the first international office, but we're going to work very, very closely with headquarters in Las Vegas. So ultimately, yes, this office would oversee those kinds of things, but we've got a fantastic team in Las Vegas that works on our events, on our television productions, on all the different products that we will bring to market. So it's going to be a collaborative thing, as you would expect.
All right. Now, regarding legalization of mixed martial arts in Ontario, what do you think the biggest roadblock could be? Many point to Ontario Athletic Commissioner Ken Hayashi and the Section 83 of the Canadian Criminal Code, while others believe it will be the MPPs and those in charge of legislation itself. Do you have a standpoint on that yet? Like where you're going to tackle first, or is it just going to be an all-out war?
It's not going to be an all-out war, Carson. I mean, but these are early days. I mean, as you well know, I haven't even started full-time, so I'm kind of moonlighting on your wife's job here at Level 5. So, but it is early days, and I think it's going to be a combination of all those things. I've already reached out to the Athletics Commissioner, Ken Hayashi, and we plan on getting together at sometime in early June. I think it's a question when you're talking about all levels of government. It's a situation where we want to change from awareness into understanding and education, because there's a lot of awareness as to mixed martial arts and the UFC, but there's a lot of confusion about it as well. There's a lack of understanding, and I think you can gain more clarity in those issues through education and through having open dialogue with all the different people to explain really what we're trying to do, why we're trying to do it, why we are seeking regulation. We're seeking regulation because of athlete safety and health. That's why we're doing it. We want to make sure it's a level playing field. And sometimes people don't see that because they only look at it superficially. So that's going to be the number one priority in terms of moving the government agenda forward. But it's a process, and process takes time. And we're going to respect that and recognize that we do feel very, very confident that the sport will be regulated in all 10 provinces at some juncture. One of the reasons why we're confident in opening up our office here in Toronto is that we believe in time the province of Ontario will be regulated. So, but it does take time, and we're going to be patient and do it properly.
All right. Now, throughout your career, you've had many accomplishments. You are the commissioner of the Canadian Football League, the president of Adidas Canada, CEO and president of Solomon North America, and today marks your final day as marketing director at Level 5 Strategic Brand Advisors, one of Canada's premier brand strategy firms. With all of that said, where does this next chapter rank on your list of achievements?
Well, the first thing I would say is I haven't achieved anything yet because I haven't even started. So, but you know what, Carson, I've been really lucky. I think I've worked for some really great brands and really great organizations, and worked with some terrific people. Level 5 is a great example of that, but through the CFL, Adidas, Solomon, all those companies. And frankly, I'm really excited about the quality of the people I'm going to be working with at the UFC. I've met a lot of them. They're incredibly passionate, but they're also very professional, very disciplined, and they're smart. And so I just think this is another opportunity to work for a great brand in a sport that is the fastest growing in the world. And as you know, I love sport. So I can't speak to any achievements because I haven't started the job yet. But I can tell you I'm really excited about the opportunity. I'm really looking forward to contributing.
Right. Well, I mean, definitely when it comes to achievements, having done something in this avenue yet, that still remains to be seen. But, you know, having, you know, Dana White, the Fertitta brothers, entrust such a large job in yourself, that's definitely an achievement in itself. And there's obviously a reason why they felt you were the guy. Well,
it's a nice compliment. But, you know, now the pressure's on my back to make sure I deliver. And you know what? I'll put together a great team, and we'll deliver it collectively.
Okay, now just looking back at your past achievements, are there any similarities? Let's talk about specifically maybe between the CFL and the UFC product.
You know what? I think there are a lot of similarities, and I think there's similarities with Adidas and Solomon as well. In each of those areas, they were the premium brand. And so if you look in Canadian football, you know, the number one brand here is the Canadian Football League. In terms of Adidas, a top global brand. In terms of Solomon, a top global brand. So I think you have really very distinct similarities between the UFC as the leading category and the leading brand in the MMA category. The other thing I think that's really interesting between the CFL and the UFC is that the athletes are, first of all, they're incredibly gifted athletes. They train hard, they're committed, they're focused. But they're also very approachable and they're accessible. And that was one of the things that really stood out when I was with the CFL's commissioner. These guys lived in the community, they worked in the community, and they contributed to the community. And that's what you see, that I've seen so far with UFC athletes. And I think that's a really interesting parallel that I know is one of the reasons why the UFC is such a powerful brand.
All right, well, I mean, legalization of mixed martial arts in Ontario and all of Canada is something that I have been waiting for a very long time. And there's no one more fit to make the push other than, than the UFC brand. And I think with your track record, you'll do an amazing job, and I'll be rooting for you all the way.
Thanks, man. I'm really looking forward to it, and we'll chat again.